A lot of parents think their child has suddenly become difficult, suddenly emotional, suddenly angry, suddenly impossible to get off screens, suddenly arguing about everything, but often the child is not the starting point. The routine is. And once sleep, screens, exhaustion, and inconsistent boundaries start feeding into each other, the whole house can slowly begin to feel chaotic. What many parents are seeing is not one isolated problem. It's a system that has started spiraling. Most family problems around behavior do not begin with bad children. They usually begin with accumulation. A child starts sleeping slightly later. Screens become more emotionally important. Bedtime becomes negotiation instead of structure. Parents become exhausted. Boundaries become inconsistent because everyone is tired. And then, something important happens. The emotional atmosphere of the home changes. Small requests become arguments. Simple transitions become battles. The child becomes more reactive. The parents become less patient. And evenings start feeling tense before they've even begun. Many parents then assume the child is the main problem, but often the child is responding to a nervous system that is already overloaded, and the adults are overloaded too. Sleep is probably the most underestimated behavioral factor in modern family life. A sleep-deprived child does not usually look sleepy. They often look emotional, impulsive, angry, oppositional, distracted, or hyperactive. That's the important part. Poor sleep often disguises itself as behavior problems, and modern routines quietly damage sleep in multiple ways at once: late screens, irregular bedtimes, emotional stimulation before sleep, arguments at bedtime, bright light exposure, weekend sleep drift, constant dopamine stimulation from short-form content. The brain does not transition calmly from TikTok or YouTube shorts into deep restorative sleep, especially not in children. And once sleep quality drops, emotional regulation drops with it. That means more frustration, lower tolerance, more crying, more arguing, more impulsive behavior. Then parents react emotionally because they are exhausted too. And now both sides are dysregulated at the same time. One of the biggest mistakes parents make is negotiating at the moment they are removing the screen, because by then, the child is already emotionally attached to continuing. That's why evenings explode. The boundary arrives too late. If the first boundary appears at "turn it off now," then the conflict starts immediately. But children usually tolerate structure far better than sudden interruption. The real issue is not screens themselves. Screens are tools. The issue is unstructured access combined with inconsistent limits. Because inconsistency teaches children something extremely important. If I keep pushing long enough, the answer might change. And once children learn that persistence sometimes works, negotiation becomes part of the routine itself. That's why some families end up having the exact same argument every single night. Not because the child is manipulative, not because the parents are weak, because the pattern has accidentally trained itself over time. This part matters because many parents secretly blame themselves. But exhausted people struggle to regulate emotions too. After work, responsibilities, stress, housework, school pressure, and constant mental load, many parents are functioning on very low emotional reserves by evening, which is exactly when children are often at their most emotionally dysregulated. So both sides collide at the worst possible moment, and then parents often feel guilty afterwards. They shout, then regret it, then become softer the next day. Then the boundaries weaken. Then the child tests them again and the cycle continues. This is why random tips often fail, because isolated parenting tricks do not solve systemic routine problems. The structure itself has to change. Children adapt surprisingly quickly when boundaries become calm, predictable, and consistent. Not instantly, but predictably. In fact, the first few days are often worse. That's normal, because children test whether the new boundary is actually real. If bedtime changes, if screens reduce, if routines become firmer, most children initially push back harder. That does not mean the approach is failing. It often means the previous pattern is losing control, and this is where many parents give up too early. They assume this isn't working, when actually the nervous system is adjusting to a new structure. Consistency matters more than intensity. You do not need a perfect home. You do not need military discipline. You do not need to become an aggressive parent. Children generally respond best to calm predictability, especially when the adults themselves become more regulated. The families that usually improve are the families doing simple things consistently: earlier screen boundaries, no device negotiation at bedtime, more predictable evening routines, consistent sleep timing, reduced emotional escalation, less shouting, less chaos, less unpredictability. And importantly, parents stop trying to win every individual argument, because parenting is not about winning one evening. It's about shaping the overall system of the home. Small changes repeated consistently are far more powerful than emotional reactions. I made this video because many parents feel ashamed talking about these problems. But honestly, modern family life is difficult. Screens are everywhere, parents are exhausted, children are overstimulated, and routines can slowly drift without anyone noticing. So I put together a practical 7-day reset guide focused specifically on sleep, screens, evening routines, and behavior patterns. I've also created a simple one-page evening reset checklist for parents who want a very quick starting point. Both are linked below. If your child has severe anxiety, developmental difficulties, or serious sleep problems, that deserves proper professional support. But for many families, the problem is not that the child is bad, the system has simply drifted, and systems can be reset.